Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Cutting Room Floor, here where we discuss the sermon from the weekend before. So I'm here with Pastor Wes.
Hello, everybody.
Who was our first writer and preacher at the Cape campus this weekend.
That's right.
We started a new series this weekend, one that we've been excited about for a little bit, called Win at Home.
Absolutely.
Not Win a Home.
We were actually asked about that.
Yeah. Someone actually thought the handout we gave said Win a Home.
Yeah.
And so we had lots of excited people in the morning.
They thought they were going to come away with a house. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't entered into that outreach ministry yet. That'd be pretty crazy though if we started.
Cool. Yeah.
So we started the series Win at Home, and it got me thinking about the differences, but also similarities in our homes.
Yeah.
You know, two different stages of life, two different kind of patterns and rhythms of our homes.
Yeah.
Like I've got, we're both married, so we both have that, but I've got two young kids.
My goodness.
5-year-old girl, 2-year-old son, I got a 2-year-old dog, and a 4-month-old puppy.
Yeah, as if you didn't have enough, you went out and got a puppy.
Chaos. Yeah, I don't know what we were thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what.
And
was
for a
wrong
while,
with
you
us.
had other relatives living with you.
We
too.
did. Yeah. My sister-in-law lived with us for a little while, and so our home is noisy, busy. It feels like something's constantly moving in our home.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever fully settled.
I can't imagine.
Which I know is night and day from your home right now.
Right now it is. Yeah. We only had one son growing up, but life was way different back then because it was full of activity, and we tried to get a large enough place that Caleb's friends could all make our house the game center and the hangout place.
Yes.
And where
your house was the house.
Yeah, I wanted to make it that so that I could keep an eye on things.
That's it. It's like home field advantage for sports.
For real. And I am sorry about the Eagles last night. Speaking of win at home, they did not do that.
It's what they could not do is win at home.
They could not do that. But we want everybody to win at home. And for me during that season, that had a whole lot of different definitions, And we needed a lot more order and those kind of things than now. So now it's just my wife, Becky, and I, and our wonderful, amazing dog who worships me. Her name's Addie.
Your biggest fan.
She's my biggest fan. Yeah, she's awesome. And frankly, me and my dog have no trouble getting along, Now, my wife and I, sometimes we don't see things eye to eye. So we've said, that whatever stage of life you're in or whatever your home looks like, then God still wants to be involved in our homes. He wants to, as the Bible says in the Message paraphrase, he wants to move into the neighborhood, but he actually wants to make his home among people like us.
Yeah. And the reason I highlight the differences in our homes and what it looks like, the rhythms, the current realities of it is you had this awesome definition of home that you gave where you clarified some things, which I think were helpful for a lot of our communities that listen. Yeah. And so can you just give us a little, like what was that definition of home that you shared? Because I think it matters a lot for today, but also for this series.
Yeah. Well, it really is the configuration of relationships that make up your most core relationships. Yeah. In other words, they may live with you or they may not, or it may be those that are in your dorm, or maybe those that are in your apartment complex or condo. Could be your neighbors. It could be extended family that you live with, or it could be roommates. There are a whole lot of different relationships that make up what it looks like to be home. We actually have persons in our congregation that don't have a physical home. Some live in their car, some live in tents. And so as the pastors, one of the first things we had to do is to think through what kind of homes are we talking about here? And we're talking about all of them, whatever shape or size, whatever configuration of relationships. Each one of us has those core relationships that for us makes home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's been so much fun to talk about this with that broad view of home, that we're not narrowing in on a physical structure. We're not narrowing in on one specific, type of family or look of family. Yeah. We're really zooming out on all of these different aspects of what home really looks like. And it's about the core community of people that we surround ourselves with, or animals. Like,
you're and I. That's true. That's right. And there is hope for you if you hang in there, because it is a lot quieter at our house. And I got to say, so much of the complexity has left the building.
I'm sure the questions you and Becky have each day are different than the questions Elisa and I have each day now.
Yeah. We date night could be any night. We can do what we want. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of that, my wife restarted graduate school, and so she's busy as she can be at night. And we each have pretty full schedules. But for us, it's the two of us, yes, but there are other relationships that make up our most important relationships that we call home.
Absolutely. And so to help us in this series, we're talking about building a home God's way, God's blueprint for a home. And so to help us with this, we are going to look at the physical structure of a home in this sense of you build a home from the ground up.
Yeah.
And so we started with this idea of a foundation.
Yeah.
Of every building, every structure has to start with a foundation. If you don't have a foundation, you're going to be toast. Mm-hmm. And so you talked about how foundations matter and how they're really important, not just for buildings, but for what we build our lives upon too. Can you share a little bit about some of the stuff you got into, talking about how important foundations are?
Yeah, and the metaphor of home is something that Jesus, who himself had no place to lay his head, taught in the most famous sermon that have ever been given in human history. And he ends that message that you can find in the biography of Jesus written by Matthew, Matthew 5-7. Those are the chapters. And at the very end of that, he brings it all together. And he says, a person is wise if they follow my teaching. It's like building a house on bedrock. Yeah. And he says a person is foolish if they just kind of go their own way and they try to build their house on something else. It's like building a house on sand. And the storms are going to come. We'll get into that in a minute. And the one that will last is the one that's built on bedrock. And in other words, Jesus is saying, build your life on me. Build your life on being a disciple. Build your life on following me, and it will hold secure and prove secure no matter what. And I use the example of the tallest building in the world, Burj Dubai, is the easiest way to say that building's name. And how much they had to invest in the foundation. I was thinking coming into this conversation today about the closest example I can find that we can visually see is the 9/11 Museum.
Yeah.
And I think you've been there, haven't you?
I have. Yeah, I have.
And the depth that you have to go to, to find the artifacts and those things that they put down in there, and it's a gigantic chasm.
Yeah.
They're entire fire trucks down there.
Yeah.
And the foundation of what made up the World Trade Center towers is remarkable, and that's where those fountains are, and we just saw that on the memorials yet again this year when we marked that anniversary. And so the foundations they matter in life, and what is true for buildings is true for life, and that is we have to build our lives on a deep, rock solid foundation.
Yeah,
if we want to be ready for the storms.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what Jesus says at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. You mentioned it. And it's this interesting conclusion to this sermon.
Yeah.
Because for 2 chapters prior, Jesus has preached about this really high standard, set apart way of living.
Yeah.
As a follower of his.
Yeah.
And then he concludes it not with, as preachers we often say we're guilty of preaching this, not with, oh, well, you can't do it anyways, so whatever, there's grace and done. No, he ends it with, therefore, you have a choice.
Yeah.
You could build your life on me and my word and the word of my Father and have this solid foundation, or you build it on sand and watch it crumble. And so it's this, the Sermon on the Mount is all of this set apart way of living as a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And then it concludes with this invitation to decide, what are you going to build it on?
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful thing that Jesus is trying to get across in his teaching.
Yes.
And it really makes me look at the Sermon on the Mount and go, well, what if this isn't just like pie in the sky? Like, oh, it'd be great if we could one day achieve this.
Right.
But what if it was like, no, if we want to live that life, what if our starting point is where Jesus ends?
Yes. And he wouldn't have said it and taught that specifically if it wasn't possible for
Right.
us to experience.
Right.
And so it's not
Right.
to just create some kind of desperation, although frankly it does because of the
Correct.
all the topics that get. And he says 6 times in the Sermon on the Mount, "You have heard it said, but I say to you."
Yeah.
And he takes it up a notch with each one of those. Every
Yeah.
time he says that, take a deep breath, get ready.
Yeah.
Because he's going to ramp it up. You think it's okay to just stay away from, and you're righteous if you don't commit adultery. He says, if I tell you, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart,
Yeah.
then oh boy. So that's hard.
Yeah.
that's a whole new
Yeah.
level of living life that we need Jesus for.
Yes.
And yet it is possible. It's
Bingo.
not
Yeah.
it's not just some kind of a pie in the sky thing. It is a legit life that followers of Jesus can be empowered by His Holy Spirit
Yeah.
to actually live and enjoy.
Yes.
And remember, the whole thing starts off with you're blessed when.
Yeah.
And they're all unexpected, all 8 of those.
Yes.
But it's about living this blessed life. Some translations even go so far as to say, happy are those who,
Yeah.
and that's not a happiness based on circumstances or based on our feelings. It's a happiness that
Right.
endures because it goes back to the foundation.
Right.
In my hometown of Lexington, when I have visited in recent years, they were building a new tower, and the dig for the foundation took about 3 years. In right downtown Lexington, and there was just this big hole because they were meticulously working on each one of the foundational cores, the piles that were going to make up the building. And those are things that will never be seen, never be admired. Nobody says, can I go to the basement of the building? No, they want to go to the top.
The top,
They want to look out and see the views and those kind of things. But foundations, even though they're hidden, they matter so much. And so Jesus is saying, build your life on me and my love and my way and my truth.
Yeah.
And then you'll have an anchor that holds.
Right.
Yeah.
And that visual too, I think it even emphasizes what Jesus is saying even more of the taller the building,
Yeah.
the deeper the foundation has to be.
That's right.
Meaning if you're watching online, like the taller you want to go, the deeper this foundation has to be able to withstand where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so I think of Jesus' teaching when he says, "You've heard it say, but I say to you."
Oh, he's digging another
He's
level.
he's inviting his followers to live this set apart, high standard of life.
Yeah.
Which means the foundation is to go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. And it's true for buildings. It's also true for trees.
Yes. Yeah.
And the Psalms speak of this.
Yes.
What it looks like to be a righteous person is your roots grow
Deeply rooted,
deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to study those too, to see how this network of roots, actually connected with other trees too, help provide security and safety and help these trees stand for so long.
Yes, absolutely. And we shouldn't let desperation and dependence on God make us think that it's impossible to do it all together.
Yeah,
that's the other piece I think with the Sermon on the Mount that we were hitting on of like, yes, when Jesus says these words, he invites us like build our life on Him. It's we're dependent on His foundation.
That's right.
But it doesn't mean that it's just impossible even with that. You're gonna no. It's we can build our life on Him.
That's right.
And we can live this set apart way of living that He talks about.
And it is countercultural. It's counter the world's values. Blessed are the peacemakers, he begins in one of those 8 beatitudes. The attitudes that are to be in us are, is to be a peacemaker. Now, that's not really in vogue right now.
No. No.
It's to, people are trying to incite one another and argue with one another and battle with one another. And a lot of us wish for peace. We pray for peace. But Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Yeah. And you follow me in such a way that you become an agent of peace. Peace is found in a person, the person of Jesus. He is our peace, the Bible says. Yeah. And so when we build our life on Him and with Him, in fact, when we let Him build our life, then that's where these things can come alive. And I think, and you too, we both have actually experienced this stuff. Yeah. It's not just like, well, I'll hang on to Jesus so I get to heaven. No, Jesus is hanging on to us right now and rebuilding our lives, sometimes from the foundation up.
Absolutely.
It's never too late to start. He can. I shared. I was a senior pastor of a church when the foundation of my life crumbled.
Yeah.
And so it's never too late, and he can always renovate.
Yeah.
And he can always find those broken places in even our foundation.
Absolutely.
And rebuild from there.
Absolutely. And we really see the depth of the foundation when it comes to the storms we face in life.
Yeah.
Jesus. This was the metaphor he landed on in the end of the Sermon on the Mount.
That's right.
And you spent some time talking about this too, of this reality of storms are going to come.
Yeah.
And it's easy as a follower of Jesus sometimes to think that when I follow him, life's just going to be good.
Yep.
Meaning, and we put good in the sense of like easy or like no trouble or our definition of good.
Yeah, that's right.
Like no hard things, no trouble, no anything.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is like no trouble still comes. Hard times still come. You talked about that this week too, of that awesome verse in John 16, where Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So he promises like trouble will come, but when we have that deep foundation, we seem to be able to navigate storms differently. And so I know you shared about some of this in the sermon, but if you wanted to elaborate on this too, what have been your own experiences with storms you faced in life? And there's a variety of types of storms.
Sure.
And having that foundation, being able to handle those storms in a different way.
Yeah. Well, there's some storms are unexplainable. They just kind of spring up out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And, those are storms like health troubles. I've had my share of those. My extended family has too, people that I love deeply, loss. We've experienced loss and death, and we've experienced tragedies that have come our way, and they frankly are, at least for my satisfaction, unexplainable. Yeah. People have tried to give me the paint by numbers thing, and I understand where they're coming from, but it just doesn't make sense. And you gave me a great line in between services when we were kind of helping me get better for that day, as we do every week. You said it's not satisfying. It's satisfying your head, but it's not satisfying the cry of your heart.
Yeah.
The answers that we give.
Yeah, you're not looking for logic. You're not looking for here's how this happens. See, cancer happens because cells in the body.
Right. I got that.
I know that.
Yeah. I understand that. My artificial heart valve. They think I got rheumatic fever. Okay. Well, there's the explanation. Why do I have this? Well, that doesn't satisfy.
Right.
And yet, some of that is the way we approach following Jesus. There's a style of preaching that's gotten popular, and authors and pastors that have bought into what's called the prosperity gospel. Yeah. And frankly, there's a lot I like about it. Like, if we would just be faithful to God, He will bless us with material blessings, great health. He'll increase our fame even, and sphere of influence.
It'd be great if it were true.
Oh, man, it'd be great, but that's actually not what the Bible teaches.
Exactly.
It'll sell books, I'm telling you, man, and it preaches good too, you know. But that's just not the reality. In fact, all of the disciples who heard this first message of Jesus ended up dead. And
in terrible ways too.
Yeah, Peter crucified upside down. Others, burned. Others thrown to wild animals. I mean, oh wow. Yeah. And that was their life. And think about the life of Jesus. He didn't exactly have it easy. Again, he didn't even have a home. And when he shared in the goodness of God and the grace of God for the world, they put him on a cross and kill him, even though he had no sin and he committed no crime. Yeah. He was innocent, and a lot of times I like to argue with God and say, but I don't deserve this. Well, okay, join the club, because Jesus didn't deserve any of that.
Right.
And Jesus didn't promise us that we would never get sick and never have trouble, and we would end up with just loads of money. I wish it was the case.
It'd be great if he did.
It would be.
Yeah.
But he does teach us that foundations matter.
Yeah.
And they make a difference.
Yeah. Because
as you shared a few weeks ago about your visit to the garbage dump in La Cruz, Nicaragua, what Pastor Felix taught us, who lives there and ministers to the people, that if you got to live in a garbage dump, you want to live in a garbage dump with other followers of Jesus. You want to live in a garbage dump full of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And you want to be able to forgive one another, and as the Lord's forgiven us. All those blessings have really nothing to do with any kind of structure or even any kind of the money you have or how successful your kids are. If you put bumper stickers on your car, my kid's an A student, awesome. But, not every kid is. And so we can take heart that Jesus has overcome the world and offers to be our foundation so that we can find something to assure us and secure us when the storms come. And they come to the foolish and the wise in this story. They come, as the Bible says, to the just and the unjust. Yeah. And so there's a common need for this foundation.
And isn't so much of that work proactive? Meaning, it's hard when we're in the midst of a storm.
Yeah.
If we've not been intentional beforehand, building our foundation on Him and doing things and practices and rhythms that sustain us and guide us and help us, isn't it extremely difficult or more difficult once the storm is here to all of a sudden revert back to, no, God is with me. And I've got like, I don't know about you, but it's like, man, if I'm not intentional being proactive before the storm hits, building my life on Him, building my foundation on Him, the storms are that much harder. They're hard anyways.
They are.
But there's a proactive nature to this, I think.
Yes.
Of ordering your life and orienting your mind and your heart around building on God's foundation for our life.
Yeah. Heard the story of a guy whose house burned down and he was standing outside with his family, and they had built their lives on the foundation of Christ. And watching your home get destroyed, having had just some damage to my home that we had to move out after the hurricane, there's something emotional and soul deep that affects us. And so this family was watching their house burn. Their neighbor came over and said to the man, how are you, as they were watching the firefighters put out the storm? And he said, well, we are as we have always been. We are in the hands of a loving God who will never leave us or forsake us. Wow. And the witness of that man rippled out, and the story was told all over the neighborhood and all over his little community. Because when you go through storms, it's one thing to try to make it on your own, and we just can't. And so to go through a storm with Jesus, we know for sure at least one thing, and that is that God is with us.
Absolutely.
And that alone makes all the difference.
And that guy, that example, I love that you shared that. That's an example of someone, he wasn't just thinking that and believing that when the fire started.
Oh, no.
He had a life.
That was a lifetime of building a foundation.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. That's it. And I think that's just important to keep in mind of the stuff we talk about. It's easy for some of us to hear the sermon and to go, okay, well, life's okay right now.
Yeah.
And I just got through a storm or a couple storms, and like life's pretty good. And I kind of have all the plates are spinning, all the stuff's kind of tame.
Yeah.
But I want us to understand that like that's the best place to be in, truthfully, to hear this news.
Yes.
Because then there's things proactively that we can do to firm up the foundation of our life. To go, okay, so when that storm comes, guess what?
Not if.
Yeah, when it comes. I don't have to be completely spent sideways. Right.
And you can't start then, it's too late.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like when that massive hurricane hit us almost 2 years ago. Thankfully on this one, I had my generator and gas and food and those kind of things. But even then I was like, we don't need more than a couple days, right? Yep. And so we started running out of stuff. We had to go to Miami to go shopping, and took a whole half a day just to do it because it was too late to try to do that after the storm or during the storm.
Yes.
And the same is true in life. If what we do now, our previously pastor, our friend Pastor George, used to say, what you practice in seasons of calm will carry you through when the storms come, the seasons of storm. And that is absolutely true. The time to start building a foundation is now.
Yep.
And it's hidden and it takes a long time, but that building in Lexington is now majestic.
Right.
And it took 3 years to build the foundation. And yet if a tornado comes that way, it's too late to go say, well, you know what we need is another 164 feet of foundation now. It's too late. You can't do that. We're seeing this in Florida right now with all of our condominiums and what's happening in the crisis there because of the Surfside collapse. There's a new law. You have to have in reserves enough money to basically refit the whole building should a storm come or they find a crack or something like that. And so the assessment fees are more than the mortgage itself, more than the payments themselves because they're trying to pay it now.
Absolutely.
And what should have happened 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
So the cost is really high.
Yes. And you named it of yes, while we have hope if we're in the middle of a storm that Jesus is with us.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of it. Well, you the foundation work at that point.
Yeah,
it's a little too late.
Yeah,
it's more so hanging on.
Yeah,
And
I would say the time to say yes to Jesus being the foundation of your life is right now.
Now, yeah.
And if you are in the middle of a storm, He can step in and do miraculous things, and He can help you.
Yeah.
And it will be better than if you don't have Him.
Absolutely.
I was visiting a guy in the hospital, and his life was falling apart, and he said, you know what, I'm ready to say yes to Jesus. I'm going to need Him, and do need Him now. And I baptized him right there in that hospital bed, and he is making it through his storms.
Yeah.
But yes, it is still better to start now because you're either just coming out of a storm or one's coming, or you're in the middle of one right now.
Yeah.
Storms come, period. Yes. That's what Jesus teaches us.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it comes down to a choice.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Jesus presents at the end of the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
He I love it. He doesn't end with like a warm and fuzzy and then they lived happily ever after.
Right.
He ends with all right, therefore, there were two builders. I mean, it's this awesome way to end. You said it was one of the great speeches because it really leaves it up to us. If there's a choice in this matter, there's a choice we all have.
Yeah.
In Jesus's terms, building on our house on the rock or the sand. In our terms, it's building our life on Christ or something else or someone else of our world.
Right.
Tell me you shared a little bit about your and Becky's story of really this transition for your home.
Yeah.
Of having God be the foundation.
Yeah.
And not other things, other ambitions, other people, whatever. Share a little bit about that and then the difference that it's made. Because it's been, years since that decision.
It has been.
That big shift happened.
Yeah.
And so looking back about the difference you've seen. Share about
we've
that
had
with us.
2 decades now.
Yeah.
Of building on a new foundation.
Yeah.
And what happened was a combination of things. Sometimes suffering is unexplainable, the storm is unexplainable. But sometimes the storm is very explainable.
We cause it.
And I'm the culprit. Yeah.
So
in that situation, both happened. We had a series of just tragedies that came our way. We lost a child. My wife and our young son Caleb were attacked in our home by a serial rapist who was armed, and miraculously made it out to safety. I was facing my own troubles. My father's cancer came back. My grandpa got cancer. It was just one thing after another that are unexplainable. But my response to those things, because the foundation at that point for our home was built on me. And my ingenuity, my ability to try to win people over and persuade people to my side, and all those kind of things, avoid conflict. I just couldn't avoid the emotions anymore of all those losses. And so what I did is choose to continue to go my own way, which led to terrible anger, and we got to the brink of divorce. And again, God's grace stepped in the middle of the storm because it's never too late.
Never too late.
And I had not done a lot of preparation, but God's in His mercy reached out to me through a counselor and her husband, one of my professors at Asbury Seminary. And so, with a lot of careful patience and discernment, she and her husband and some others helped us rebuild the foundation of our home. And it came down to this, that we decided that I needed to be let go as the leader of the home. And so I laid myself off. And we chose instead to make one of our visions for our home that Jesus is the leader of this house. Yeah. Boom, period. Yeah. So who's in charge? It's not, don't wait till your daddy gets home, you know, or, well, let's go ask mom, or what do you think, to our 3-year-old. we would do those, you know, we would say, okay, everybody throw in your 2 cents worth, but now we're going to pray about this. We're going to seek God together, and his will is going to be what we choose, because it is a choice. Yeah. And so that was the first big one. The second big one was about how we related to each other. And so that was, simply put, that every person in this house is a cogpal, meaning child of God, person of worth. And so this comes down to an anchoring, a deep foundation of our identities. And first, our own identities, that I wasn't a failure, as I felt like as a father, for not being able to protect my home, save my son. Yeah. I'm not a failure as a husband because I can't get along with my wife right now. I just thought of myself as just complete failure. Sure. And so my inner critic came out, and he used hammers on me. I mean, it was bad. And so with this new discovery of an identity, now I had an identity that's immovable and unshakable.
A firm foundation.
A firm foundation. That's right. As we were saying. Because you can't get divorced from being a cog pal. You can't get laid off from being a cog pal. You can't go into depression so deep that you're still not a cog pal. You can't struggle with anxiety or anger or some addiction and get your title taken away as a cog pal, child of God, person of worth. It is the only secure identity that we can build a life on. Success is not it. Money's not it. Status is not it. We had a nice house. We were, trying to look good. All those things are sand. They just fall apart when the storms come. They look good when it's all dry and sunny outside. But when the storms come, our lives just almost got washed away.
Yeah. In that shift, one of the things, you said them both. One of the things you shared that helped anchor your life on that foundation were these visions.
Yes.
Were these mantras.
Yeah.
And I know we challenged people. We gave them a handout with some questions.
And I hope some of y'all are working on that this week.
Yeah. What encouragement would you give to people on why that's so important to really create that vision or that idea for your home?
So we each live with some certain mantras in our head, or some things that we consider to be true. Yeah. And some of it could be actually pain, or it could be something that somebody said to us that's not true, that's not from the voice of God, the heart of God. And it could be built on insecurities. Mine was built on fear. Mm-hmm. And so, my mantra was always like, you're not good enough. You'll never measure up. God loves everybody but you. Mm-hmm. These were the truths in my head. They're not true, but that I was living off of. And so when we anchored our lives and our home on these two immovable foundations, then it became for us like bedrock. Yeah. And frankly, they were not up for discussion anymore. Yeah. Because we'd say, okay, we're going to treat everybody in this house as a cog pal. Mm-hmm. So that meant when my wife and I got into intense fellowship, we had to take a deep breath. Yeah. And we learned new skills like how to listen, and to actively listen, so that I wasn't just listening to Becky and then formulating my own rebuttal.
Listening to understand, not listening to respond.
There you go. Thank you. That's what those are the type of skills. We spent time together. Yeah. We would had family meals. We're going to talk about some of these tools later on how to live those out. But it came down to those two statements that we put on the refrigerator, and when push came to shove, when the storms could come and would come and have come since then, we face more. It's like, okay, here's two things we know. Like, I don't know the future, but I know that Jesus is the leader of this household. Yeah. And I know that we're going to seek to, even though we don't always, regard every person in this house as a child of God, person of worth. Yeah. And again, we're not super Christians. We didn't live this out perfectly, but one of the gifts that God gave to us was an ability to be authentic and honest with one another, and an ability to forgive. Yeah. And I've had to seek forgiveness, a lot of it, from my son, who's 25. And in the grace that God has given to him, he freely gave it, the forgiveness to me, and said, Dad, I understand it's over, and I forgive you. And my wife and I have had those same conversations, and I had to be honest. Listen, I was wrong, and I am sorry. And you were my son's youth pastor through part of that, so you know the backstory. Yeah. And there were times it felt ugly, but I tell you what, without those two mantras, but because when we go through trouble, we look for something to hold on to. And for me, the railing that would secure my life was anger, because I was comfortable being angry, and that brought a little bit of order to my life. Like, watch out, because otherwise I didn't know what to do.
Because anger was being used as a way to kind of reset
That's
everything.
That's right.
We're gonna get this back to order.
That's right. Yeah. Try to command control, which never worked. Yeah. And so those mantras are what we've built our lives on, and we'll continue to.
It's so good. One more question. You named kind of the three spots that a listener could be in. Mm-hmm. They're just getting out of a storm.
Yeah.
Maybe a storm is coming, or maybe they're not in one yet, but one's the storm's come, so it's on its way.
Yep.
Or they're in the middle of one right now.
Yeah.
You shared this word, and I completely agree. It's never too late. Mm-mm. It's never too late to start building the foundation. Mm-hmm. One's more preferred than the other.
Oh yeah.
Like start building it when you're not in the middle of a storm.
Yeah.
It'll make the storm a little bit more, give you some rails to grab onto.
That's right.
But even if you're in the middle of a storm today, it is not too late. You can begin saying, God, I need you as my foundation.
Yes.
With that in mind, if it's not too late, no matter where you're at on the storm journey, what is a piece of advice? What wisdom would you give to a listener who maybe has a shaky foundation right now on what they can do to help firm up their foundation under God?
Mm-hmm. So Jesus gives an invitation to a whole crowd of people, and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." And I would say today to take Jesus up on his invitation, because wherever you are, there is no condemnation. He did not come into the world, John 3:17 says. He didn't come into the world. God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. Yeah. And we love John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he only gave his son. But sometimes we forget John 3:17, the very next verse, because we fear, it's too late now. Well, listen, it's never too late. Today is the day. That's why I say it's right now. What Jesus said to Zacchaeus when he came to his house, and Zacchaeus had ruined his life. Yep. He built his life on a foundation of stealing, greed, selfishness, betraying his neighbors, his family and friends. And Jesus announces after seeing Zacchaeus' life transformed by turning over his life to the leadership and lordship of Jesus, he says, today, salvation, which means wholeness, has come into this house. And today is always the day. So right now, wherever you're listening, wherever you are, if you're driving, pull the car over if you need to. I had to do that one day when I was a young adult. I remember pulling the car over and kneeling at the bumper of my car to, again, give my life as best I could at the time to Jesus. And so I would say right now is the time for that, because he will work miracles to help us make it through and get to the other side. Yeah. He won't abandon us. He will walk with us even through the valley of the shadow of death. We don't have to fear any evil because he's with us, and his rod and his staff will protect us. And so just know that his heart is gentle. Yeah. And there's not going to be I told you so. Right. And that's not how he ends the Sermon on the Mount. He doesn't say, so you better do this or else. Yeah. He says, hey, this is the choice that's before you. Mm-hmm. And there's no persuasion. There's no tear jerker. There's no, he didn't have the band come up and start playing, behind to some soft song. Or there's absolutely none of that. It's just matter of fact. Yeah. And Jesus issues that same opportunity for us today. And it doesn't even really need to involve, I don't really, I'm not feeling his presence right now. Well, of course not, because you're going through a storm. Right. So decide in your will, you're going to follow Jesus. That's about, in my experience, about 97% of the time, right?
Absolutely.
It's not, man, I feel so inspired to follow him now while I'm in the hospital or my family's falling apart or my life is crumbling. No, it's, I have decided today to follow Jesus, no turning back. And he loves us so much that he gives us a choice. he could have somehow he could have manipulated us or made us into robots or forced us into his love. But no, this is authentic love, and you can't force that on somebody. You can just offer it.
Yeah.
And so today, say yes to Jesus being your foundation. That's what I'd say to everybody, including me and you today.
Yeah, yeah. The choices, as you put the choices before us, Jesus gives us the choice.
It is.
And so the rest is up to us.
That's right. He even gives us the power to choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that instinct that maybe you have or that decision you're making, he's behind it all.
Yeah.
Because he loves us and wants to woo us and win us into his love and grace.
Which is beautiful. Well, Wes, thank you. I can't wait to dive in. We got a couple more weeks of this series, and we got some good stuff coming.
Oh, yeah. You're up this next week. It's going to be spectacular.
Yeah. I'm excited.
I'm going to hear it several times and take a lot of notes. And so I hope that everybody will be here for this week.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be good as we dive more into this. So thank you for today. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
God bless you.